Hello, everybody. Welcome to the lunch table. I am your host, Evan, and today I'm joined with Nick and Joel. And today we're going to be doing our NFL draft recap. Before we start, make sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok at lunchtable.takes. And if you guys tuned in to our NFL draft show on that Thursday, then you saw a little bit of what we thought about each pick. It was a good time. We live streamed it on Twitch, and so we'll probably be doing more of that stuff sometime here in the near future, so be on the lookout for that. But we'll dive straight in with the NFC North. We'll start with them and the Chicago Bears. So I'll give it to Nick first. What did you think of the Chicago Bears draft overall?
Right, give me 1 second. I don't think they had a terrible draft. I'm kind of indifferent about a lot of the things they did. I do like the Darnell Wright pick in the first round, but I don't understand why they traded back when Jalen Carter was on the board.
I agree.
And he would have filled a dire need for the defensive line, the front seven that the Bears so desperately needed. But they did address a need in terms of the offensive line with Darnell Wright, so it could have gotten a lot worse. I like the Tyreek Stevenson pick at 56. They addressed the defense a fair bit, which I think was their biggest need. So it's not a terrible draft for them.
Yeah, to piggyback off that, I agree with that, the whole Jalen Carter being there at 9 and you trade back. But I think it was pretty clear that they were more than likely going to be looking on the offensive side of the ball in that first round. And honestly, who they got in the second round, going both defense with 53 and 56. You talked about Stevenson. I feel like another one we can talk about is Gervin Dexter. That he's an animal up the middle too. But Roschon Johnson, the other Texas running back, you just lost David Montgomery, and Roschon was an animal and a leader at Texas. Everybody talked about Bijan, but Roschon was just as good and let me rephrase that. He was good and he made a huge impact, and I feel like he can make it a big impact in that backfield alongside a Khalil Herbert as well. So those were the two picks that I really liked later, and obviously I liked Darnell Wright, and I told Zach he would go early. I had a feeling
you did say that back on the second mock draft. You said I would not be shocked if his stock kept rising.
Well, and he was so surprised at me for having him go like 13.
Yeah.
Like I just had a feeling. How about you?
I like that Wright pick. I do agree they could have taken like Jalen Carter, and of course they gave him to the Eagles, but I think they did a lot of damage in the last 2 days, like you guys touched on, getting Stevenson and Dexter in the second round. I really like the Roschon Johnson pickup. I like Tyler Scott as well from Cincinnati. He's a burn, gives them another wide receiver out there. So I think they addressed most of the needs that they had coming into the draft. And I think the Bears are in a good spot. They had a pretty good draft, and they got a ton of cap space for later. And then they got some extra picks from that, obviously trading down from 1. And so I think they did pretty good. But I like them addressing offensive line. I was a little surprised that they went Darnell Wright, but I like it nonetheless. But I think they got a lot of value down the board.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that really saved their draft. So before we move on to the next team, what would you guys grade their draft?
I'd give them like a B+, A-. I don't think they're one of the like standout teams from this draft, but I don't think they had a bad draft by any means.
I'd give it a B. I think overall they addressed a lot of positional needs, and they hit on a lot of their picks. So, and trading back so many times, getting a bunch of that draft capital this year and for next year. I think overall I'd give it a B. Like you said, not really one that stood out, but a solid one for them to keep building upon.
I'd give them a B as well. Moving on to the Detroit Lions. This one, they had an interesting first couple of rounds in the draft. So, Nick, what did you think of their draft overall?
Yeah, I'm not gonna say that they had a bad draft, but it was very, very confusing. Like when Jahmyr Gibbs went 12 at the time, we were all like, why was that even talked about, much less made? But then they traded away DeAndre Swift, so it doesn't look that terrible in retrospect, but I still think it was not a good pick. And even Jack Campbell at 18, I get he was the best linebacker in a pretty weak class, but I still think that's a bit of a reach. But then day 2 comes around, and I think they had a really good second day. I think Brian Branch at 45 was one of the picks of the draft when you combined need with positional value and combine that with there's not a ton of great safeties in this draft. Sam Laporta at 34. A lot of people give them flack because they took him over Michael Mayer, which I understand, but I don't think Sam Laporta was a bad tight end by any means. And if Hendon Hooker can come back from his ACL tear, I think that could be a really decent project that they could potentially build upon. And they didn't lose too much if it doesn't work out. Even though Jared Goff had a great year. So I think they had a much better second and third day than they had on day 1. But the first day is when you can do the most damage, and I just didn't really understand either one of those picks.
I would say I would definitely have to agree with that. Like I said, we all thought the Gibbs one was very interesting. I mean, I expected Gibbs probably to fall into the first round, but I didn't expect it to be clear at 12. But like you pointed out, like getting Laporta, Brian Branch, I loved both of those picks. Honestly, I didn't expect Laporta to be above Mayer, but I liked it for them. I like.
I think
Laporta.
it's a better scheme fit for the Lions.
I agree. Getting that Iowa tight end, just like TJ Hawkinson was. I loved their draft overall. I just think that in terms of like positional value and that you take in your in that first round, definitely was shocking to say the least with a running back and a linebacker. So, but I think overall, like you said, Brian Branch, that pick was amazing. Hendon Hooker, if he develops, that could be their quarterback of the future. So I overall, like you said, they had pretty solid day 2.
Yeah, I think their day 2 is really what saved this draft for them. Like you said, I feel like both of their day 1 picks were reaches at where they were picking. Obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs is a great running back, and he does a lot of what DeAndre Swift did. So, like you said, Nick, right when that pick happened, we were all very confused on why you would get a running back that high when you have basically that same type of running back, and you just signed David Montgomery to a deal. And so that was why it was really weird. But then they went out and traded DeAndre Swift. So now Gibbs kind of fills that role at a much younger and cheaper option. But I still think 12 is very high for what he was projected.
They could have got him at 18. That's the thing.
He was projected to go late first round. Like the Bengals were looking at him at 29 or 28. So so seeing him going at 12 is definitely a big shock. And like you said, Jack Campbell in this very weak middle linebacker class, getting him at 18, I feel like he probably could have slipped to that day 2 pick, and they probably would have still gotten him there just because I didn't really see a lot of first round hype from him, even though he is good.
I will say, though, they definitely took the best linebacker in the draft.
Yeah, without a doubt.
If that was their game plan,
yeah,
all power to them. You got your guy. It seems like they got both of their guys. So,
yeah, which is what you want. Which is what GMs want in their drafts. And then, like you both touched on, Branch, great safety. You got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson there, but he's only on a 1-year deal, so he could be out, and then Branch could step right in. And then you got Laporta, who's a good tight end. Some people argue if you should have taken Mayer or not, but like you both said, I like it with the scheme that they run and how they've utilized their tight ends in the past. And then getting Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker obviously had a phenomenal season at Tennessee. He's a bit on the older side at 25, but coming off that ACL injury, probably won't play much of this year. But if something does happen to Jared Goff, or Jared Goff takes a step back from this year, Hendon Hooker could be a fine starter for them for a little bit if they need it. So I think day 2 is really what saved them here. But
if Hendon Hooker didn't tear his ACL, he probably would have been a first-round pick too.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. He would have gone. He honestly could have gone before Levis.
He could have, yeah.
Yeah. What'd you guys grade the Lions?
I mean, I have to give them like a C-, though. I can't ignore the first round of the draft that they had. I don't think it was good at all. Although the Jack Campbell pick was all right. I still think it was a bit of a reach, but like if they were trying to go after him, it doesn't seem that bad. But I didn't understand the Jahmyr Gibbs pick, and I still don't really understand it. So, but their last 2 days of the draft kind of saved it from being one of the worst in the league. So,
absolutely, I think I'd give it around there. I'd give it a C+. Probably what I'm going to go with overall.
Yeah, I'd give them a C+ as well. Not great, but definitely could be worse. So
yeah, you got some key pieces in there that made it pushed it up.
Oh yeah, day 2, big save. Because like when day 1, they were like a D, like
yeah,
F,
absolutely.
If not the worst. Yeah, they had arguably the worst first round of the whole league.
Day 2 got them a couple points up.
Absolutely.
Now moving on to the Green Bay Packers. They obviously made a big trade before the draft, getting Aaron Rodgers, so that was really part of their big thing. But what do you guys think overall of their draft?
You want? I can go first on this one.
Yeah, you got it.
I honestly love their draft. It started off first round for me. You guys all know, everybody that watches, how high I've been on Lucas Van Ness, and going at 13 there, following their trend of not drafting a offensive weapon, it fit perfect for them. They needed that pass rusher, so getting Lucas Van Ness was probably my favorite pick for them. But even going out and getting a guy like Jaden Reed, who's going to make an instant impact, because typically with your day 2 guys, you're drafting them to play as a starter or compete as a starter. So like Luke Musgrave and Jaden Reed, both of those guys I think are great. It was such great value, and just like the ability that they have going forward with Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, and then Jaden Reed and Luke Musgrave. It's perfect. Even Tucker Kraft's in there too. Overall, I really like their draft. They hit on a lot of great picks, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not as high on Van Ness as you are, but I still think they had a great draft. I think that Jaden Reed pick was fantastic at 50, and they addressed the receiving core in round 2 with Musgrave and Jaden Reed. And yeah, the Van Ness pick was not a bad pick by any means. Like you said, they needed that edge rusher. I'm just not as high on Van Ness as you are, but I think overall it's a very solid draft for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think Van Ness is a good player. We'll see how he fits in that Green Bay system there on the edge. I didn't think it was like as pressing of a need. Like when it first happened, I was a little like, oh, okay. But again, day 2, they did really well, getting Luke Musgrave filling in that tight end role, getting Jaden Reed, who both you guys have mentioned is a steal at where they got him there in the middle of the second round. And then double dipping and tight end, getting Musgrave and Kraft, who are both top tight ends in this class, in a position where they were very weak at coming into the draft. And so I think they addressed a lot of needs offensively, and they continued their streak of not drafting an offensive player in like the first round. But I think day 2 and top of day 3, I think they did pretty well. So would you guys grade the Packers?
B+.
I'll give them a B.
I give them a B as well. All right, last team
because I'm higher on Van Ness.
That's because you're higher on Van Ness.
Yeah, you were hyped about that pick. All right, now last team in the NFC North, we got the Minnesota Vikings. They didn't have that many picks, but what did you guys think of the picks?
It was an interesting one. I honestly thought it was an interesting one. They clearly had the need of wide receiver in Jordan Addison. And they really didn't have a whole lot of picks to work with.
No.
So, I mean, for what they had, I think they did well. Mekhi Blackman, USC DB, great pick in my opinion, but the cream of the crop for them definitely was Jordan Addison. You let go of Adam Thielen, and it's time to bring in a new face. And I think Jordan Addison will indeed make a starting day one impact for them. So overall, I thought it was a solid draft with what they had.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was a great draft for what they had. I like the fit with Jordan Addison in the slot. Now that you said Adam Thielen is gone, Mekhi Blackman I think addresses a need in the secondary because their pass defense is one of the worst in the league last year. And even late in the draft with Dwayne McBride, like we don't know what they're going to do with Dalvin Cook. We don't know what's going to happen in the next year or two with him. So he could come in and kind of potentially fill that need in the run game if he pans out. But it's a late round pick, so who knows? And with only 6 picks, I think they made great strides with what they want to do in the future. So I like their draft for what they had.
Yeah,
I agree. I think Jordan Addison at 24. I didn't have a first round grade on him, but like you both said, wide receiver was one of their needs after losing Adam Thielen. They really only had Justin Jefferson and a couple other guys. So getting Jordan Addison, who was still a good player, and I think he'll fit well right in there with what the Vikings are trying to do. And then, like you said, Mekhi Blackman there in the second round is a good corner. I liked him as a day 2 guy. And then I think they got some good picks very late in the draft. I like the pick of Jacqueline Roy there at defensive tackle from LSU. I like that in the top of the 5th round. And then, like you said, Nick, getting Dwayne McBride top of the 7th round to kind of fill that need of running back, because odds are they're going to be moving Dalvin Cook here in the near future is what it's looking like. So getting another running back who I like as well, I think, like you both said, with where they picked, I think they did well with where they picked. And
do they still have Madison?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I think it's still Madison. Always
you trade away Dalvin and use Madison and McBride. I like that.
Yeah.
Madison's a freak.
Joel knows Madison's the fantasy handcuff for the last 3 years.
I hold on to him like it's my job.
Yeah.
Because Dalvin Cook gets hurt every year.
That is true. That's why they're probably getting rid of him.
Yeah.
Well, the Dolphins are still in on him, even though they didn't trade for him during the draft. They're still trying to maybe get something.
They'll trade for him and get a pick out of him for this coming year.
But if you look at the Dolphins, if he can stay healthy, that'd be really nice for the Dolphins.
Oh, absolutely.
It would be crazy for them if they got Dalvin Cook.
AFC just gets more loaded.
Overall for this one, with what they did with what they had, I thought they hit it out of the park, but I'd give it overall, I'd say a B.
I'll give them A-. I really like their draft. The only reason I don't have them higher is because of the picks that they had. They only had 6, but I like what they did. So I'll give them an A-.
I'll say B+ because there's some B's later there's some drafts later that I think this one's better than. I'll go B+.
I'm going to go B+ as well, just from where the amount of picks that they had. I think they got good value for where they were, so I think they did well there. All right, moving on to let's do the NFC East.
NFC East. All right.
We'll start off with the Dallas Cowboys.
Cowboys.
Hold on, I gotta find where they're at. There they are. Okay.
What do you guys?
I think this one had the most feel-good story of the entire draft. With Deuce Vaughn, his dad calling and saying, "You want to come to work with me next week?" I thought that was awesome.
That's so cool.
I love Deuce Vaughn. I mean, it's impossible for you not to love Deuce Vaughn.
Yeah.
Overall though, like the Mozzie Smith one was I wasn't expecting it. But it's a good pick. Up the middle, they need some help. I like him. I think it'll fit with them very well. I did not expect them to take Luke Schoonmaker. I did not expect that one. But I did like their Overshown pick. The Texas linebacker / DB. I love that pick. He is constantly going to the ball, making plays, and even like when you watch them play, I watch them play like against Alabama and all those games, and he is a name that you heard a ton, and I think that's going to continue for Dallas. So overall, I liked a lot of their picks that they made.
I think their draft was hit or miss for a lot of people. For me, it was more of a miss. I actually am not that low on the Mozzie Smith pick at all because they needed him. They filled a dire need and run stoppage in the D line. But the Shoemaker pick was one crazy reach. I had him as a late round 3, and they took him in the second round. And I get he fits what they want to do, but just as a player, I don't see the ceiling that Dallas does, I guess, with the second round pick. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not like that aware of the Overshone pick, so I'm just gonna take your word for it. But I wasn't a fan of the Shoemaker pick. And they went O-line in the 5th round, which they do need depth at tackle, but I do like the Deuce Vaughn pick outside of the feel-good story. I mean, do they have Zeke? They don't have Zeke anymore, right?
No.
Didn't think so. Okay. So, a feel-good story. I also like that pick because they do need depth at running back. Overall, I think it was very hit or miss for most people. I think the positives and the negatives kind of balance out.
Yeah, I was just as you were, Joel. I was surprised at their first round selection, but after doing a little bit more research and kind of seeing what the type of player he actually is, I think he fits well right into what they needed. They needed that interior run defender, and they didn't have that. Obviously, their outside pass rush is really great with DeMarcus Lawrence and obviously Micah Parsons, but they didn't have that guy up the middle to really be a good run defender, and that's exactly what Mozzie Smith is. Yes, he's a run first defensive tackle, and so I think that fits in well. But like you both said, I think that Shoemaker pick was definitely a reach with guys still available in Tucker Kraft and Darnell Washington, who I'm personally higher on, and I'm sure you both are too.
Absolutely.
I think there was a reach, but like you said, I like the Overshone pick. They just recently said that Micah Parsons is going to transition to full-time defensive end, so getting another outside linebacker.
That works out perfectly then.
Yeah, so getting another outside linebacker, like you said, Joel, who makes plays all over the field, is really good, and he honestly could be a plug-and-play guy.
Absolutely.
If he does well in camp. And then obviously Deuce Vaughn, like you both said, it's the best story to come out of this draft. That call is super cool. I love watching that video. It just puts a smile on my face seeing that, and just as like a parent, that has to be so cool. Just like go to work with your son, that'd be so cool. But yeah, I don't think the Cowboys had a bad draft, but I don't think they hit it out of the park either. I think it was solid.
Yeah. Overall, I'll give it. I was gonna say I'd say B-, like because of your, like Nick said, the hit or miss aspect to things. I feel like it was. Yeah, I'm gonna go B-.
Yeah, I'll give them a C. Like I said, the hits and the misses balance out, so I think they had like an average draft.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to one of their division rivals, we got the New York Football Giants. What do you guys think of their draft?
I loved it. I loved it. Honestly, though, like you go out and get Deonte Banks in the first round. You need that corner. You need that lockdown corner. Deonte Banks is your guy. You need help on the offensive line. John Michael Schmitz. You got your center for the future. Or he can move and go play guard. And then probably my favorite one of those, you go out and get Jalen Hyatt. You get a guy that can take the top off the defense. Because all they have right now is a bunch of slots. Like, essentially, they have basically a bunch of slots.
Yeah.
I thought, especially those first 3 rounds, I thought they killed it. And even like the later round picks that they had, they did well with what they found value later on, in my opinion.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I love the Deonte Banks pick in round 1. I think my cornerback 3 in a very, very deep corner class. I think he was behind Witherspoon and Gonzalez for me. And they got him at 24. Like you said, the John Michael Schmitz pick. was also really good. And I love the Jalen Hyatt pick in the third round. Like you said, you get a guy who can take the top off the defense. It's a perfect fit for them. And even Trey Hawkins in round 6, I think was also really good. I think he's going to provide great special teams versatility at the bare minimum. So I think they addressed every need that they kind of needed, and they got value with all of their picks, especially in the early rounds. So I love their draft.
Yeah, I like like you both said, I like their top half of the draft. Obviously getting Deontay Banks, who is a crazy athlete at DB, 6'1", ran a 4.3 840, has some phenomenal speed, top end speed in this draft DB wise, and then like you both said, getting John Michael Smits, he will probably be their starting center here in the next couple of years. He was a guy that we had seen sneaking into the first round in a couple mock drafts. Obviously the overall number one center in this class, and then like you both said, getting Jalen Hyatt, like you said, Joel, they have a lot of slot guys with Slayton, Sterling Shepard. You got Paris Campbell now.
Paris Campbell, yeah.
And,
Wandale Robinson.
So they had a lot of slot guys, more smaller, short route guys, and you get Jalen Hyatt, who, like you both said, who has great speed, can take the top off of the defense as a deep threat, and I think he's going to be one of Daniel Jones's favorite weapons just because of his ability to get open. I don't really know much about the players they drafted late round, but I like their first 3, so I think they did pretty good.
Yeah, I'd give him an A-.
I agree with that. I'd give him an A-.
I'd go A- as well. All right, now we have probably the best draft in this draft, the Philadelphia Eagles.
You took the words right out of my mouth because that's what I was going to lead off with for the Eagles. You trade up. You had the 10th overall pick. You trade up one spot to get potentially the best player in the draft in Jalen Carter. And then you go down, and then you go in at 30 and you get his teammate, Nolan Smith, who
Steal the first round.
Steal. Absolutely. I don't know about that. I personally would say it was Christian Gonzalez to New England at 17.
I disagree. I think the Nolan Smith pick was the best value.
I think it's those two. Two. Like I personally lean towards Gonzalez, but like I can see why you would say Nolan Smith. But you go out, you get Jalen Carter, you get Nolan Smith, you get Keely Ringo. There's 3 Georgia guys on that team.
Yeah.
And then you go out, trade for DeAndre Swift. Even Sidney Brown Sidney Brown. Oh yeah, absolutely. Even Sidney Brown for Illinois. Everybody talks about Witherspoon. Sidney Brown was a freak as well. Like they hit this draft out of the park. I love this draft in every aspect.
Yeah, you kind of just said everything. Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Keely Ringo, Sidney Brown. Yeah, Tyler Steen. They needed depth at guard. Howie Roseman pulls off another masterclass. They're not my best team in terms of the whole draft. We'll get to that later. But I mean, they knocked it out of the park. One of the top 3 drafts in the entire league, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, for them to move up from 10 to 9 to get arguably the best player in this draft and only have to give up a 4th round pick.
Yeah.
It's a huge steal.
They gave up a 4th rounder for Jalen Carter.
That's basically what it was. It was a 4th rounder for Jalen Carter.
Why did the Bears agree to that?
I don't know, but it's an absolute steal. And then, like you said, Nick, getting Nolan Smith at 31, also a huge steal. They could have got Nolan Smith at 9, and it would have been,
and people would understand it.
Yeah, nobody would have thought anything about that. But getting him at 31, phenomenal value. And then I love the Sidney Brown pick. He was top 3 safety in this class, like you said, Joel. Him and Witherspoon in that secondary were just amazing for Illinois this year. And then I like what they did in the back half, getting Tanner McKee, who I like as a backup quarterback out of Stanford, and then Moro Ajomo from Texas. He's a good defensive end too. So I think all around, and Keely Ringo as well. Keely Ringo was he's more of a boomer bust guy, but if you can get him to
reach his potential,
then he's going to be a phenomenal corner. And we saw some flashes of that at Georgia. But I think I just think they hit out of the park. Back-to-back years where I think they drafted an A or better grade, which is insane. And so the rich get richer and kick to Philadelphia.
I'm going A.
I'm going A plus.
I'm going A plus as well.
I mean, I've never really given an A plus draft. So
A plus is hard.
Gotta have a little fun though.
Yeah.
Well, he's going to be a teacher, Nick. He's a strict grader already.
I understand.
I'm a strict grader. My kids are going to not be happy with me.
All right. Moving on to the last team here in the NFC East division, the Washington Commanders. What do you think of their draft?
I will say this. I love Emmanuel Forbes, but I did not expect him to go before Christian Gonzalez, Deontay Banks, Joey Porter Jr. I did not expect that. But I can see why he was a first rounder and why Washington likes him. I like that pick. Overall, like, I didn't feel like they did bad, but I don't think they did amazing. I mean, Jartavius Martin was their second pick from Illinois, another Illinois DB. That Illinois DB room,
it was nuts.
It was nuts. Like, we've already talked about three of them. I mean, we haven't. We've already talked about.
We'll
get
get to the third. Yeah.
But like, we've talked about those two, and I mean, Devin Witherspoon. That group was insane. But overall, like, I wasn't in love with their draft. I like a couple picks from it, but yeah.
I mean, I thought they did a fine job. They addressed needs in terms of the secondary, and now with the news that they're probably not going to pick up the fifth-year option for Chase Young, that KJ Henry pick in the fifth round looks all right. I like Emmanuel Forbes. I thought he would go in the first round at some point. I just did, like you said, I didn't expect it to be before Gonzalez or
Banks.
Deontay Banks. I think he should have gone above Joey Porter Jr.
Yeah.
So it's fine at 16 if they like him more, if they had him higher on their draft board. You can understand it. I thought they did fine. Like, I don't have any issues with it.
Just a normal draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think Emmanuel Forbes, I think it was a little bit high for him, but I mean, they needed DB bad, and they got one of the better ones in this class. So, and then obviously, like you both said, the Jatavius Martin pick was good there, another Illinois safety, and then Ricky Schomburg, who's a decent center out of Arkansas. But yeah, I just think they had an average draft, so I'd give them a C.
I'd go C.
I'll go C plus.
I would like to point this out.
Yep.
In each year's draft, like these past 2 years, have you noticed with Washington, they take a guy that you typically aren't expecting. Like last year, they needed a wide receiver, and then they go out and draft Dotson. They drafted Dotson when like a guy like Treylon Burks was still there.
Yeah.
And then this year, you draft Forbes when a guy like Gonzalez is there. It's just showing, in my opinion, like they have their guys.
Yeah.
These are the guys they want, and I'm all for it. I like it.
And I mean, Dotson had a better season than Treylon Burks did last year. So
absolutely. He was healthier too.
Yeah, that was the main reason why. Now moving on to the NFC South here. We'll start off with the Atlanta Falcons with what you guys think of their draft?
Atlanta Falcons. Bijan.
This is what
Bijan. I loved Bijan. I think overall, like, I love their first four for sure. You getting Clark Phillips in the fourth or fifth. I think it was fourth. Yeah, fourth.
Yeah.
And Zach Harrison. I mean, we've watched enough.
We've seen plenty of Zach Harrison.
We've seen plenty of Zach Harrison to warrant him going in the third. And then Bergeron, we thought they have him down as a guard. I'm like, okay, I like it. But I think overall getting Bijan, you're adding another offensive weapon to this team of young talent. You have Drake London, you have Kyle Pitts, Bijan, you have Tyler Algier, and like Lindstrom on the offensive line, and you add in Bergeron. Like I thought they did good. I thought they did very well on this one.
I disagree. I don't. Here's the thing with the Bijan pick. He had better be a top 10 running back in the league off rip for you to draft him 8th overall. I'm a big believer, especially now, and you don't need to spend a first-round pick on a running back.
I agree.
And Bijan at 8, especially when Jalen Carter was still on the board. I also thought they could have really used Jalen Carter.
I agree.
So I don't really understand that pick. And Bergeron's a good pick. I think Bergeron was the best pick that they had in their draft. I'm not like crazy in love with it, but he was still a solid pick in the second round. Zach Harrison was fine. Clark Phillips and DeMario Hollins addressed their depth in secondary, but I'm not a fan of the Bijan pick at all. Which me saying this, he's going to turn into a top 5 running back in the league by the end of the year. Which I could, if that happens, great for them. But especially when Algier just rushed for 1,000 yards, like I don't understand it personally.
Go ahead, Evan.
Yeah, I think I don't hate the Bijan pick, but I do think it is high. Like, if Bijan pans out, brilliant pick. But if he doesn't, then you passed on so many guys like Jalen Carter, all those type of dudes. Like, so it's really like this could go in 2 different ways. This could be just a genius move by the Falcons. They have a stacked running back of Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson, and their offense is just athletic freaks with Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, and then you bring in a quarterback, whether that's Desmond Ridder or somebody in the future. They very well could have a great offense. And then I like Bergeron to go alongside with Chris Lindstrom. They just gave him a long extension, so you can put him at tackle or guard, whatever you see fit. And then Zach Harrison. I really like the Zach Harrison pick as a defensive end. They needed some more pass rushing, and I think that's what he provides. He wasn't anything exceptional at Ohio State, but he's got some intangibles and attributes to him that I think you like on a defensive end. And then, like you said, Joel, I like Clark Phillips there, value-wise at 4. They've addressed secondary hard this year in the offseason, and bringing Clark Phillips, who was atop that CB class, is good. The only real question mark in this draft, in my opinion, is that Bijan pick at 8. But you could you
could argue that they just went with the
3-4 talent in this draft.
Yeah.
So,
best running back prospects in Saquon. So
I was about ready to say,
yeah.
Do you think in their draft room? I mean, we have no idea. We're just going to say it straight up. Do you think they just went, in their opinion, just go best player available?
They might have said Bijan's too good of a talent to let fall past us.
And that's kind of like why I said what I said.
Yeah, I disagree with saying that there's not another talent as good as him when Jalen Carter was still on the board.
No, I completely.
So that's my main reason with why I don't like the Bijan pick. But I think Bijan's going to pan out. I think he's too good not to.
I was gonna say, dude, I think he could instantly,
if he gets hurt or not.
Yeah, I think he's too good not to pan out. I just would have gone Jalen Carter at 8.
I think he's going to be instantly plug into that top 10. Personally, I think he's a freak. I just think he's going to make an instant impact. He'll be at least top 10 by the end of the year.
Yeah, they're going to be a fun Madden team, that's for sure. One thing about the Falcons that I want to talk to you guys about is, so obviously right now they built up that offense with a lot of weapons. You got Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and now Bijan. They don't really have a quarterback. Obviously, Desmond Ridder's their quarterback, and I don't think Desmond Ridder's their guy. I'm not very high on him personally. So I was thinking the other night, so obviously with how the 2024 class quarterback-wise is looking, very deep quarterback class, I think the Falcons finish around where they were this year. I think they finished around that 7 to 10 range pick wise.
Okay.
And you have the Cardinals who just traded for that Falcons pick, or not Falcons pick, Texans pick.
Yeah.
So, like with Kyler Murray missing half the season, the Cardinals very well could be the worst team, if not one of the worst teams in the NFL. If the Cardinals get that number 1 overall pick, and then that Texans pick ends up being like 2 or 3, I could honestly, if I'm the Falcons, I would be calling Arizona saying I could trade up to 1 because they could take Marvin Harrison at 1. So it really just depends.
If I'm the Cardinals,
it just depends. It just depends on what happens with Kyler.
Yeah,
because if Kyler wants out, you're perfectly in line to get Caleb Williams, your quarterback of the future.
Yeah, if Kyler misses more time than initially, like what it said, half the season. If the Cardinals finish as the worst team in the league next year for whatever reason, I don't even care if Kyler wants out. I'm trading him. I'm drafting Caleb Williams. I think he's that good. I think Caleb Williams is the best quarterback prospect since Patrick Mahomes.
But
okay, I think he's that good. I think whoever finishes at 1,
I think it's a great comparison. Between
he plays like a more refined Mahomes did when he was coming out of college.
Absolutely.
This is not. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Mahomes. I'm just saying that he plays
it's a comparison. It's a comparison that even quarterback coaches in the NFL are making.
Yeah.
Like this is something that a lot of people believe.
Yeah, I think whichever team ends with that first overall pick, unless it's like the Panthers, which they just drafted Bryce Young. If it's like the Panthers, or obviously if like Josh Allen has a season-ending injury and the Bills finishes the first overall pick for whatever reason, then I think that whatever team ends with it is going to go with Caleb Williams as their guy, no matter who they have in the behind center.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's going to be the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. We'll see. I feel like a lot of teams that needed quarterbacks address that in this draft. So I don't think there's as many teams that are very quarterback needy, and I think the Falcons are one of those teams that are very quarterback needy.
Rams probably will be next year too.
Yeah, and then maybe the Saints and Raiders, depending on how Carr and Jimmy G pan out.
And we also don't know exactly what they're going to like. They trust Desmond Ridder.
Yeah.
Like we don't know. He could
be good. I don't know. I'm just don't project.
Yeah, we don't know. But if that opportunity comes, potentially, yes, I would definitely be in the sweepstakes trade up to get Caleb Williams.
Yeah. It's an interesting thought.
Yes.
All right, moving on in the next NFC South team, the Carolina Panthers.
I gave them a B
number 1 overall pick. What you guys think?
I mean, I like the Bryce Young pick. He was my quarterback 1 in this class, so I think they made the correct choice at first overall. But the rest of the draft was kind of meh. So this entire draft, I don't really think we need to go in depth here. This entire draft is resting on the development of Bryce Young and if he becomes that guy for them. If he does, this draft is fantastic. If he doesn't, this draft is going to be looked at as probably one of the worst in recent Panthers history, because the Panthers actually have a history of drafting pretty well. But yeah, it's
especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, it's just going to depend on the development of Bryce Young.
I'm going to point out a little bit. I love Mingo. I think that pick, beautiful. You needed that weapon because your best weapon was Adam Thielen. I think Mingo's an instant plug and play starter. Ole Miss wide receiver, and he's your big man too. I liked him personally, and I think that's a good weapon to go out and get Bryce Young. Even Chandler Zavala from NC State, the guard. I think he can make an impact. He can fight for a spot on that offensive line as well.
Yeah, obviously, Bryce Young is their big pick. I'm honestly becoming more of a Bryce Young fan. Coming into the draft, I wasn't too crazy about him, but I like the way that he carries himself. I like
his energy.
Yeah, and I think he's a good leader, and I think as long as obviously the size concerns, but I think he's good enough to kind of look past that and still be a good quarterback. So I'm really starting to like Bryce Young as a player. But like you said, Joel, I really like the Jonathan Mingo pick. If that pans out, that could be a really good weapon for him pairing up. Because obviously they just lost DJ Moore. Their wide receiver room is not as good as it once was. So getting Mingo, it's good value there in that second round. So I'd probably give their draft like a B+.
Yeah, I'd give it a B+ too.
I'll give it a B.
Oh.
Look at me being the hard grader.
All right, next up we got the New Orleans Saints.
New Orleans Saints. There they are.
Brian.
They took our guy Brian Brzee. I mean, there's a couple picks on this list. I do like getting Brian Brzee. There's injury concern. And we've talked about him on these pods before. I like the fit for them. They needed help in the interior, and even Cam Jordan hinted at like, I'm gonna get we need a person on the defensive line. He hinted on that in like Twitter and everything like that. And you go with your first two picks going defensive line, Isaiah Foskey too. I like both of those picks. And then the other one I would like to point out is Kendre Miller. I think that's a good move because the uncertainty with Alvin Kamara, and then the other piece that you have in that backfield was Mark Ingram. So getting running back that can honestly make an impact right away in Miller was a great move in my opinion.
Yeah. I like what they did with what they had.
Yep.
We talked about this when it happened. I think the Brian Brzee pick was really good. I think he's going to be really good in the NFL. I think he kind of underperformed because, like I said, he had a lot of stuff going on in his personal life.
Yep.
That kind of impacted the way that he would play. And the Foskey pick at 40, I think it filled a needed edge rusher. And like you said, the Kendre Miller pick, we don't know what's going to happen with Kamara. So if they do decide to move on from him or he gets removed in any way, then he could kind of come in and hopefully fill that gap. I also like the Jake Haener pick in terms of being a backup or a potential starter for the future. Because I think he kind of rose as the draft process went along. Because once you started looking past those top four guys, it was kind of like Hendon Hooker and Jake Haener in terms of who they like more. And Haener showed that he could he showed capabilities at Fresno State that he could use at the NFL in terms of Fresno State kind of just going 5 wide and letting him throw, which I think will prepare him for how offenses at the NFL are going to utilize quarterbacks. And Saldivari from Old Dominion kind of fills a need at inside guard. So I like what they did with what they had.
Yeah, I agree. One pick I loved was A.T. Perry at the 6th round. I don't know how he fell to the 6th round, but I love him as a receiver. I watched him live at Wake Forest, and he's just an absolute stud. Big guy, what is he, 6'4", 198. He reminds me of kind of like a worse T. Higgins, just a guy who can throw the ball down the field and he's
down with it
50% of the time. Like he's really good at those 50-50 balls. And like he was one of the guys where if the Bengals were like if the odds were looking they were going to lose T, I was all in on getting A.T. Perry to fill that spot. But I think it's phenomenal value there at the 6th round, and I think the Saints did pretty good in their draft. So I'd give him a B. I give him a B.
I'll give him a B+. I like what they did.
B+.
B+.
All right, last team here in the NFC South. We got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They got one of your guys, Joel, there, first round.
I thought they killed the draft, personally. Yeah, they took my guy. I was hoping that would be there for the Bengals. Kalijah Kancey he was my guy up there with Van Ness. I liked Kancey more, but Van Ness was my number 2 of the guys that I really loved. And then they go out and get Cody Mock. They need help on that line. Overall, I just think they got value at each draft slot that they had. for what I figured maybe they would look quarterback too, but I guess we'll be waiting on that one next year.
Yeah, they signed Baker, so they're gonna have to kind of deal with him for this year, or maybe Baker has a renaissance and leads the Bucs to a division title. We'll see.
Or he's just a bridge quarterback.
Yeah, or we'll see. We'll see what happens. But like you said, Kalijah Cansey's a monster in the interior. He filled. I mean, him and Vita Vea.
I was about ready to say.
Good luck running on that.
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah, Cody Mock, good pick at the guard slot. Trey Palmer in sixth, late round. Addressing wide receiver depth. Dennis at 153, addressing linebacker depth. I think they had a really good draft.
Yeah, I agree as well. I like Cody Mock. I like his versatility, playing inside and outside as a tackle or a guard. And obviously, like you both said, that interior defensive line is going to be really good. But I like Trey Parker as well. Ran a 4.33. He's a burner. Kind of what they don't have in that receiving core is the burner, and I think he fits right into that. But they're definitely going to have to address quarterback here next year. But I'd probably give him a B+ grade.
I was about ready to say. Also, I feel like another guy we can point out is Yaya Diaby for the Louisville edge rusher. I think he's going to turn some heads this year. I think he could turn some heads.
He was fast at the combine.
I think he'll turn some heads. Yeah. I think he honestly will.
For sure.
You said B+, Evan?
Yeah.
I'd go in that ballpark. I'd probably go B+.
I'll give him an A-. I like what they did.
A-. All right, moving on to the last team in the last division in the NFC West. There's only really about two teams that made like any notable real picks. We'll start off with the Arizona Cardinals.
I loved it what they did at the beginning and honestly throughout this draft. You trade back with the Texans, get yourself a future first rounder, and get your protector in Paris Johnson Jr. Paris Johnson Jr. I love that move. Works out perfect for them next year too. Because the Texans did a good draft, but I don't think they're going to be they're not going to be good. I think that's still going to be a high pick. BJ Ojulari, another freak edge rusher. That'll make an instant impact. They needed help on the edge. The Garrett Williams too. I like Garrett Williams. I think in the third round, it's great value. Overall, I think I feel like they did a very good job in this draft.
Yeah. I think that the Cardinals kind of have holes everywhere. Yeah. I think they just took best player available in a lot of the spots. I absolutely love what they did in the first round, acquiring another first from Houston. Like you said, Houston, they made some strides in this draft, but I think that's going to be a top 10 pick in next year's draft. And they kind of addressed, without D-Hop, the Michael Wilson pick at least gets them a start, but I think they're going to address receiver next year. And like you said, BJ Ojulari, a freak athlete. I think they did really, really, really well in this draft.
Yeah, I agree. Getting a guy that you wanted at 3, at 6, while adding a future first-round pick that, like you said, he's going to be in the top 10 more than likely. Awesome, phenomenal. And then, like you guys said on some of the later rounds, I like John Gaines out of UCLA at guard. You're one of the best 3-cone, and that's usually what you like to see in an interior offensive lineman. Some of the best guys like Jason Kelsey, blah, blah, those guys have all had high 3-cones, and so I think he could be a late take steal. So I'd give them an A.
I'd also give them an A. I love what they did.
A.
All right, now we'll move on to the LA Rams. They did not have a first-round pick.
Honestly, though, I'm not against what they did. I honestly loved what they did with what they had. Stetson Bennett, baby. Yes.
Quarterback of the future right there.
Quarterback of the future.
What? Right, how did he get drafted? I don't mean to disrespect Stetson Bennett, but I don't why? Why? Because Matthew Stafford and all that, but I'm shocked he went where he did, but
he went before some other
yeah. He went before Hainer, I thought.
Yeah, he did. So. He did. But I saw that. I was like, oh, okay. but I mean, I like it. You learn under a fellow Georgia quarterback.
Yeah.
So, but Steve Avila, instant.
Yeah,
plug and play.
they took my guy in the second round.
Yeah, they
They
did.
took my guy.
But Steve Avila is an instant plug and play. I love that pick. I love that for him. Byron Young from Tennessee, the edge rusher. Good pick there. Kobe Turner from Wake Forest. I mean, yeah, it's a bunch of like 4th and 5th round guys, but honestly, there could be a team that's rebuilding. So
yeah, they're another one of those teams that kind of are going to have holes everywhere. So
yep. So honestly, whatever, like taking best player available here in each of these slots, I feel like was their plan, and I feel like overall they did well with it.
Yeah, I agree. I like that Steve Avila pick a lot. Like you said, I think he's a plug and play guy, and then I think they just filled a bunch of other needs down the line. I'd probably give him a B, just because.
I'll give them a B-.
I'll go B.
All right, now last pick here in the NFC, we got the Seattle Seahawks. I absolutely love their draft.
Yeah, for sure.
We're just gonna ignore San Fran.
Oh, my fault. I mean, San Francisco.
I mean, they really didn't do much. They drafted a kicker and a punter.
Yeah, that's really it. I mean, they didn't do much. Kicker and a punter, and at 3 and whatever. So they didn't. I mean, yeah,
they didn't have a pick until the 3rd round.
They didn't really do anything too crazy.
Yeah.
Real quick, I'll give the Niners a C-.
I'll give them a C.
Just because they didn't have a 1st or 2nd round pick. So
they did get Ronnie Bell.
They did get Ronnie Bell. That is true. That's a good pick in the league. I didn't even see that.
It was in the 7th, late 7th.
Yeah.
I'll give them a C.
The Niners roster is already so good, though, to where it's like.
Yeah, they didn't really need it.
Yeah.
Didn't really need much. But all right, back to
now. Let's go to the Seahawks.
Now they go to Seahawks.
Honestly, I feel like this is one of those top drafts.
Yeah, they killed it.
They killed it. Exactly, they killed it. Witherspoon, arguably some of our top. Some of us, it was our top corner in the draft. I was personally Gonzalez, but I mean Witherspoon was right there with it.
I think Witherspoon fits better in Seattle though than Gonzalez would.
I agree.
That's why they went with Witherspoon.
I agree. And then you go out and grab Smith and Jigba to complete your wide receiver room of DK, Tyler Lockett, and Ninjigba. Like that's amazing.
Yeah, it's not only that; it's that they all do different things.
They do.
So, like, and Jigba's that short, like, crisp route runner. Yeah, like, Metcalf's your 50-50 guy, and Lockett's your deep threat.
Yep.
So, you got to watch out for all of them, too. We've seen plenty of Smith and Jigba, but there's a reason he went wide receiver 1. We'll say that.
What did you guys think about Charbonnet?
Love that pick.
I love that pick, too, yeah.
I mean, him and Kenneth Murray do 2 separate things.
Yeah, for sure.
Like it's perfect. Like I was iffy on it at first. I'm like, well, you guys know how I think. I'm a big fantasy guy.
Yeah.
Thinking because Charbonnet, I was like, oh, that's a guy you can get on a. I was like, dang. But then I'm like, I started thinking about it. It's like, I love that pick.
I still think he was a huge fantasy sleeper.
Yeah.
And then even this one, I feel is going to make an instant impact for them. Anthony Bradford, LSU guard. I think he's going to be a freak for them. I think he could potentially fight for a starting spot right away.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that's my opinion. I think they killed it.
They killed it.
Yeah, they hit the first round out of the park. Devon Witherspoon, he was my CB1. Love that pick. Getting JSN at 20 is a great value. Fits right in at that wide receiver 3. He's going to be special. I like Derek Hall as well. Top of the second round. Really good outside linebacker, defensive end there from Auburn. Zach Charbonnet, like we touched on, he brings that pass catching that Kenneth Walker doesn't have. And I think that 1-2 punch with both of them, Seattle really loves their 2 running backs like they've had with Penny and Walker last year. And obviously I lost Penny, but they got Charbonnet, who I was very high on, and I like that as well. I think they hit it out of the park. I'd give them an A+, honestly. I love their draft.
I'll give him an A. I don't. Not A plus.
Oh, yeah, I'd probably give him an A.
I'll give him an A.
I'll give him an A. Yeah, but they're one of my winners for sure.
Definitely, I agree.